Big time at Charleston. I went to Charleston when they had it there. And then we had one in Decatur. I went to Decatur. I've been to several of them. I've had a little problem last 10 years. I've had open heart surgery a couple of times.
Oh.
You can't go when you want, just whenever you.
Yeah, I know.
I just got out of the hospital the 2nd of this month from a heart attack.
Well, good for you. You look great.
Yeah. And the doctor's called to be making this trip. He just kept telling me, you need to go. You need to go.
Yeah.
And it's open. I can tell it's open.
Good. Good.
Sure can.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. We are here. It is October 30th, 1999, in Covington, Kentucky, at the 53rd annual reunion of the 12th Armored Division. I am here with Sylvester Lumpkin. He is with F Company of the 92nd. Let me get started by just asking you about your earliest recollections of your family and your relatives and when you were a child.
Well, I was raised on a farm out in Cleburne County in Alabama. My dad and mother had 9 kids. I was the 5th and middle one. They 4 on each side. So we just averaged, had a country living, you know, the Depression come along, but we walked to school, about a mile to school. And we had just average living. And then the war came along, and I was the first one that was drafted in the war. So I have 3 brothers and 1 sister still living, and I'm still living. Mother and Daddy's dead. And we was raised out there, and we walked to church on Sunday morning. My mother believed in us going to church, and we went to church, and we never did, any of the family never got into anything. We just ordinary kids, and was taught and raised to behave and mind people.
Good for you.
And we've, you know, had a pretty good country living. Nothing fancy, but we had a good living. And then the war came along, and I was drafted in the Army in 41. So I went to Fort McPherson, Georgia on induction, and then went from there to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Did you consider actually enlisting beforehand, or?
No, I was working construction work. They was building highways. And at that time, they started building these airports and blacktopping the runways of these airports. And I had a cousin that was worked in that line of business. And I got a job with him. I was working at that, and we built Craig's Air Force Base in Selma. Then we built Montgomery, Maxwell, Garnerfield, blacktopped the runways. And then they came out right after the war broke out. You could get a deferment. So they came out one morning and brought a deferment and wanted me to work on and take a deferment. I said, no, I ain't gonna do it. I'm going on the service. And you know, back in those days when the war first come along, you didn't want to be a draft dodger. That was the theory then. So I went on into the service, went to Fort McPherson, then Fort Knox, and I got up Fort Knox. Why, they found out I'd been running that machinery with the construction work. So they came down and got me out of the company. I'd been there 4 or 5 weeks. And they told me they was going to put me on cadre to learn those OCS officers how to drive those tanks. So they signed me to that. I went to that and stayed with that several months, and then they got to wanting us to pull details on the weekend, such as CQ and Sergeant Guard and all, and we didn't think we were supposed to because we had a full-time job of working with those officers. So you had an option. You could either volunteer to go overseas or they'd ship you out somewhere. So we, as about, I think it was about 14, 15 of us, went down there and told them we want to leave the outfit. So they mangled around a day or two. They said, well, good. We'll send you on the cadre to Camp Campbell, Kentucky, to the 12th Armored Division. So we'll come down on the train with a cadre to the 12th Armored Division. And then we stayed there till they got in a lot of soldiers and filled the strength of the company. And we left there and came down to Nashville to the Tennessee maneuvers, they called it. Of course, we had a lot of people there at Campbell that had to take the basic training and get ready to go in a line outfit. And we came down there and pulled the Tennessee maneuvers. And that's where I met the other guys that was in the tank with me. I drove a tank for company commander. And he was in the tank, and then I had the FM and an AM radio operator in there too. You know, a bow gunner was a radio operator and the gunner was an operator. And we was in the headquarters tank. And both of those guys had done give one of these. And they wanted me to give one in Texas, but I was sort of under the weather. And they both out here today, still alive. And we go to all these things together. So we just got to be like brothers, bond together, you know, and know all about one another's life and families and everything. So we went to Abilene from Tennessee maneuvers, carried equipment but train, and unloaded it there at the railroad at Abilene, then pulled them, I don't know whether we ever named them desert maneuvers or not, but them maneuvers they had set up in Abilene. We finished that then, went to Camp Shanks, went overseas on care with equipment and everything, Tidworth, England. And
what
then,
did you do at Camp Shanks? Did you have any opportunities to?
Well, they would let you go out, but at that time, most of us was young and never been out any place, and didn't too many want to go out into that big town. So we didn't get out a whole lot, but we saw the town. Of course, I've been there since then, and it is something. But anyway, we didn't get out a whole lot because there wasn't any of the bunch that was in the outfit with me that was too rowdy about that kind of stuff. We had a few that got out, but we didn't find out a whole lot about it.
And what about Camp Barkley?
Camp Barkley was nice. We had a grand time at Camp Barkley. People were good to us. We had a good training. And that's where we filled up our strength to go to Shanks, was at Barkley, and got all of our men. And back on Tennessee maneuvers, we had a Captain Landers, commander, and we was getting ready to go to Barkley or the South Pacific. So we went to Barkley, and they changed officers, and we drew a Captain Cobb, which was a fine feller. And that's where we met him, and we went over from Barkley with him. He was a good soldier, and he was a fighting man. He believed in going out there, and we went out there. And but Barkley was one of the nice camps, I reckon. Well, I liked Fort Knox when I was there, but I really liked Barkley because like she said, I like the people that around there. And we went over from Tidworth, England.
How was the ship?
Pardon?
How was the ship ride?
It was rough. Everybody tell you that. If we'd had to, now, we got over it now, we could have drove over.
Yeah.
But it was rough, and they lost a lot of equipment. And, but we made it over. I don't recall, seemed like we didn't go over on the Normandy beachhead, but we was a little bit behind that, and each section had a number which you was in wave so and so. And, you know, and when we got over, and they to unload, they dropped us way back out in the water because there had been so many ships shut off and sunk. And but we after we got over in the harbor, our outfit, 92nd Recon, was outfit. It was more or less in the in the 92nd. We had A, B, and C tank companies, and then our headquarter company. Those three, A, B, and C, was attached to first platoon, second platoon, and third platoon. And our headquarters carried a tank, a half-track, a kitchen truck, and a supply truck. And we had a Jeep and a motorcycle, which the sentry, the guy that run the messages, drove. And that was what we were attached. And we went in those places like the captain would get a call, there was something so-and-so it needed to investigate. And that's where we'd go to find out what was our next. The mechanized cavalry was an outfit that moved around out in front to see what the strength of everything else was. And that's why we lost a lot of equipment, a lot of people. That was our job, to go out and see what was around, and that's what we did. And we sported several different places. General Patton had the 2nd Army. We saw him a lot. He was right there. We was in the outfit. He was a 2nd Army, you know. And then the 94th Infantry was over there, and they was in there right about in there with us, and they fought. But those are the boys that caught it, was the infantry.
Did you ever get an opportunity to talk to Patton?
Yeah. Not talk to him, but we pulled up to this river. It wasn't the Rhine River. I believe it was before we crossed Siegfried, imagine the line. We pulled up the creek one day, a river, small river, and we couldn't cross because we didn't know how deep it was. And the engineers hadn't put any bridges or anything in, and we had stopped. And all of a sudden, this tank come whooping up the side of us. Gentleman standing right outside the turret on the back with them Pearl pistols on his hips. Want to know what the trouble was. The captain told him we was waiting. Find out about the creek, and of course he was a wicked man. He let out a lot of words in a few minutes. There's some people up there checking the river. So we went right on across. He didn't believe in stopping for anything. He was the type man that advanced. But now, Patton was the man that won the war. Don't let nobody kid you. Because he outsmarted the Germans. He was a smart man. And he didn't stop because he took this town. I sat in the radio, and in the tank when the boys was operating the radio. When he'd call it and tell you to go take a town, and somebody to say, something about just stop at the edge of town. No, go to the next. He believed in moving. And it's a known fact in war, you lose more equipment if you stop. And that was his way. A lot of people didn't like it. You know, he got credit for slapping the enlisted man, but he had to do that. And he was the type man, he took care of his troops, and he took care of the soldiers, and he was the type man that, I guess, when he took his training, he was trained that way. And he was a fighter. There wasn't no joke to it. But now, the 12th Army Division had a lot of people that was similar to Pat. They had a lot of people that advanced when they had. Now these two guys, Brickle and Bland, that was in the tank with me, we sat and talked, laughed a lot about our captain. Somebody called and wanted to find out what was in this little town or what was on the side of that hill up there. He didn't call another company. He said, Lumpkin, let's go up and see about this. We went up to see about it. So if it was 88 or whatever it was, you run away from it if you could. That's what, the day I got wounded, we ran on some anti-tank guns, and we lost, the tank went dead and we couldn't get it cranked. We had to get out and run, and that's when I got hit. But that's war. That's what you were there for. But I hope they never another one. But war is a nasty thing. And people can say what they want to or not. But the people that they draft and put out there or enlist and put out there to win a war, most time are the people that's, well, in World War II, there was more people drafted that didn't have as much education. And they was the one that did most of the fight. But I feel myself lucky. I had a little experience in machinery before I went in there, and that's how I got in to be a tank driver. I knew how to operate bulldozers and stuff like that. That's the way I got into the tank company. But
did you land on La Havre?
We went in on La Havre, but they had done landed and moved on up when we went in. But now all that stuff was still out in La Havre when we went in there. And you know, they pretty well lost 101st Airborne there at La Havre. We saw some of that. But and another thing, I guess we were lucky. The 4 people that was in my tank was fine people. The captain's done a nursing home in Tampa, Florida, and one of these boys, Brickle, is from New Jersey, and Bland is from Queen City, Missouri. And they was both raised by people that taught them to live right. And when you went in there, you had a bond to one another that you don't never break. And it's just like meeting your brother. That's what it's like when you come back to a place like this. And they're both fine people. And they got fine wives. And so, Army's a bad thing, but it has to be done. And I just hope that we never have another one, because the way we are trying to fight it now, I don't believe they know we'll win it. We'll have it in the United States, we'll have another one. That's the way it feels to me. Now, after I got wounded, I don't know why I'm about to tell you this, not, but after I got wounded, I came back to Tidworth, England.
And let's just go back a little bit. You got wounded in August of
March of 21st of 93.
43.
43.
Okay.
And
Where was that at?
that was right on I don't know where you say the south. I guess you would say the south of Rhine River, before across Rhine River. We had, they come in on the radio and tell the captain that there was something on the side of the hill up there on the right of the road that needed investigated. He said, Lumpkin, let's go see about that. So when we ran off the road and went up there, they no telling how many was dug in the side of that hill. And they had an armored car had followed us up there, and he was up there just spraying them holes where they was dug in. Well, our assistant driver and gunner went shooting them 30 calibers too and was doing the same thing. And they told me to cut the engine off so it wouldn't make so much racket. So I cut it off in about 30 minutes. Couldn't crank it. The battery was dead. So the captain said, yes, man, the tank. Here me and Brickle was sitting down in chairs here, and them people out there shooting at us. We had to get out, and the only way you get out is up to it and run. So him and Bland went out, jumped off the back, took off. Me and Brickle had to undo the hatch and jump out. I got off on the left and him on the right. Started back, and we'd run, I guess, 5-10 minutes of what dropping mortars everywhere we'd run. So one hit me, and I got hit in the chest and the neck. So they couldn't do anything for me, and they went on to down to the road, and they was flying B-24s in there picking up the wounded. So the medics come up there and I got an artery shot in two right there, and they just stapled it together, you know. So after we got back to Tidworth, England, though, what was funny about it, they discovered I had a bullet right there beside of my heart. And I didn't remember it hit me. I didn't know when it hit me or nothing. And they had sewed my neck up. I got hit in my neck, the back of the head, and side of it. And I went before a board of doctors. And they was going to get ready to take this bullet out. They showed me an X-ray. It looked about like a match stem right beside of my heart. And they see that?
Yeah.
And so they found that. One of the doctors found it on X-ray. And so the nurse that was over that block come in there and said they had told me they was going to operate on it and take it out. But I had to sign the affidavit that I agreed to it, or my mother had to sign it.
Yeah.
So the nurse that was over that block and I had got to be pretty good friends, Miss Pike. And she said, if you won't sign that paper, they'll send you to the States. I said, what? She said, yep. So the next morning, the colonel come in, and I told him I decided not to sign it. He said, I don't blame you. So they got me ready that afternoon, and I went down to the La Havre on the ambulance, loaded on a new hospital ship for Charleston, South Carolina. So I landed there 17 days after that, and then flew down to New Orleans in LaGuardia and got down there, and I hadn't been home since the war started, and then the commander of the hospital said he'd send me home for 90 days. So I came home, stayed 90 days, went back and had the surgery. And it was a little bullet. Yeah, some of my family still got it. My mother had it till she died. Looked about like a .22. And me and Brickle talked about it a lot. I got that thing when I come up out of that seat to get out of that tank. It was shooting straight at us. That's when I got shot, but I didn't know it. And so when they took it out, they gave it to me, and I brought it home, gave it to mother. Some of my people still got it. I don't know exactly where, but things like that, I guess, happens to a lot of people that they don't know about.
Yeah.
And I don't.
So once you went back, where did you continue?
I stayed down at La Hard for the guard, I believe about 12 days. And they come in there one night and said they had opened a new convalescent hospital at Daytona Beach, Florida, and was going to send me there. So the next morning they put me on a Greyhound bus to Daytona Beach. I got down there and they just opened this new convalescent hospital. And I stayed there 6 months on convalescent. Didn't do anything but go out to the beach and play in the sand and around, drink milk and juice, whatever. They really had them convalescent hospitals fixed up. They were nice. And then they came in there one morning and said, there's opening one in Miami. Asked me if I wanted to go down there. I said, sure. So I believe we went down there by train. And I went down there and stayed about 6 months, something like that. And I had, by then, had got a lot of point discharge. A lot of points for discharge. And every week it'd have my name up there. How many points? Well, I'd go home, I wouldn't accept it. The captain asked me one day, he says, "You're not going to take a discharge?" I said, "Not a point discharge." I said, "I've decided I might just stay in the Army." Of course, I was single about, I guess a 20-year-old, 18 or 19. And so they come in there one morning and said, "We're going to send you back to duty if you don't take a discharge." I said, "Okay." So they sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I got up there, and they told me to report to a wire house down there, and they gave me the number of it. Anyway, I was in a carol. They carried me down there. And I got out and went in and met a captain that was running the wire house that had jungle rot from the South Pacific, and they'd sent him there. And what his job was, those guys that come in from overseas with them duffel bags, they put them on the counter, and he'd sign a little slip and give it to them, and that cleared their supplies with the Army, and that was the way they turned in the clothes. So I stayed there, I don't know, I guess 4 or 5 or 6 months. And he would go home one week on Friday and come back Monday. Next week I'd go home on Friday and come back Monday. It was a nice deal. And I still live down there. Well, my mother and daddy still live there in Cleveland County. I'd drive home, drive back. So they came in there one morning and told me to go up on the hill to headquarters building, that my name was on the bulletin board up there. So they went up there and they had my name out there and a date, and said, "Go to Fort McPherson's." That's where I came in and picked up the discharge. So I asked the colonel, I said, "Is it a point discharge?" He said, "No," said, "they're giving you a medical discharge." So I went over to Fort McPherson that day and picked it up. They was paying $300 mustering out. So I drew $100 and they mailed you the rest. So I went home and did like all the other young boys and all. Ripped and romped till I spent that money. Had to go to work. So I finally wound up. Do you want me to tell what I done up till I retired?
Yeah.
So I finally wound up going back to work with the government. They got a big tank place there at Anniston Army Depot where they build them tanks from the ground up. So I was doing this disability, see, and I got a letter or two from the Veteran Administration telling me to go down there and go to work. I should be down there instead of working in private industry. So I went down there the first time. They said they wouldn't hire no veterans. So I came back and went to Atlanta, which was a headquarters for the Civil Service. Found the colonel had signed this letter, and I told him the story they told me. Oh, he got mad and wrote me another letter. Said carry it back next day. So I carried it back the next day, and they hired me. And I went to work, and I worked on till, well, I worked as a journeyman mechanic. And then they wanted, one day the man is in charge of maintenance wanted to know if I would be interested in traveling. I said, what do you mean? He said, we ship the stuff out of here overseas and around places, and we had to send people for a representative to find out and to be sure what kind of shape it's in. When they get it there and the people don't know how to operate it, you show them how and this. So I took that job, and I flew back to Germany, back to Bonn, Tidworth, England. Tidworth, Germany, where that big proving ground is up there. I was over there when Kennedy was assassinated. And you wouldn't believe, those Germans come got me, and they locked me and this guy up in a motel room for 3 days. They thought that was some enemy or something that had assassinated him. And but the Germans still don't like the American people in them small towns. But I worked on with that a while, and me and my wife adopted a boy. And I decided I need to be at home at night if I was going to raise a family.
When did you meet your wife?
We were 13-year-old in school. And the way we dated, they have these protracted meetings out in the country. You ever heard about it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, out at these churches, they'd have meetings at night. Maybe they'd run a week. Mm-hmm. And me and her we had an old 29 A model car, and I knew how to drive it. And me and her would carry my mother and her mother to those meetings at night. That's the way we dated. We grew on up, and we're still dating. I went in the Army and went overseas, still corresponded and kept in touch. And then after I come back home, me and her married in, I believe it was 46, 45, 46. Anyway, she died a couple of years ago, and we'd been married 58 years. And we adopted 2 kids. The boy is the one that carries me to all these things. And he's about 50 now, and I have a daughter. It's about 35. We got her when she's 2-year-old. And Well, I've been living at the place I'm living. I built a house where I'm at now about 50 years ago, and we live there. And I worked 32 years and 8 months for civil service, and then retired. And 30 days from the day I retired, I had a massive heart attack. So I had to have 4 bypasses. Went to University of Alabama, and the Dr. Pacifico that run that place did it. And I went 15 years and went back and had the same ones replaced again. So then a couple of months ago I had a spell one night and I went to bed with a chest. Boy carried me up to the hospital and they said it was a heart attack. I'm taking a lot of medication for it. But I'm getting better. But had a pretty good life. There ain't nothing. I'm 77-year-old. And I live by, well, I don't live by myself right now. I've got a granddaughter that's be 21 the 4th of this next month. It's going to college. And she's staying with me while she's taking this computer course in that college at this Air Trade School. And I live by myself except that. Don't go to the hospital 3 days a week and take therapy. Outside of that, I don't do anything but loafer. But this Army business is a bad business, but it's whatever you make out of it. And back when we went to World War II, there wasn't no jobs. Everybody just about at farms. And you worked out on a farm, and there was a lot of boys that got in a lot of trouble, had a lot of trouble, but that's pretty well the way they was raised. We was raised at home. If our daddy told us something, it was that way. And if he said, "Oh, don't you do that," you didn't do it. And knowed everybody in the county. And if something happened to anybody in the house, if a house burned up or somebody was sick, the whole county pitched in. Hope.
That's great. That's so great. Well, I don't know too much more that we need to go over. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
I don't know of anything else.
Okay.
Only this, I got the Purple Heart for the wounds, which ain't worth nothing. Nickel a cup of coffee, but that's about all I know about it.
Well, thank you so much. If you, we really appreciated all the time that you put into this, and I think that Purple Heart is worth a lot more than you think it is.
Oh, I wouldn't think of that, but that's just what they say, you know.
Right.
If you got a nickel, you get a cup of coffee.
Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.